Hey everyone, Sirturmund here again. As it is tradition in our channel, every time we have a new patch or new expansion, we do our patch notes breakdown and 15, I need an extra hand, 15 deck recommendations for you all to try out tomorrow, Wednesday, when the patch go live. Now, this time around, we didn't get any new cards, so the decks that I'm going to be recommending is going to be a mix of like old decks that may have gotten a little bit of changes, old decks that I think are going to be very good anyways, even after nerfs or buffs, and then some new decks playing some of the new cards that got buffed. Otherwise, if you just care about the decks, you can just skip ahead to the video and jump to that. I have this timestamp below. If you want to actually listen to us going to the patch notes and get our opinions on the changes and buffs, nerfs that Riot did, then let's sit through it. This patch wasn't as big, so hopefully it doesn't take me that long to go through the patch notes, but there are a lot of interesting changes that could potentially shake up the meta. So yeah, let's jump right ahead to the patch 4.4 notes. Also, it's so fitting that Riot chose Samira to be the banner here, right? So it's so fitting that they chose Samira to be the banner because they didn't nerf Samira. So expect to see that champion everywhere on Wednesday. That's all I'm saying. All right, 4.4. They have a little infographic here. We can skip it because we're gonna go straight to the changes. This is the first standard focus balance patch. So this is just focus on standard. There's not any eternal changes here, which is interesting. I do expect them to make some balance changes towards eternal for the next patch in a month, because next month at the end of May, early June, we're gonna get eternal rank and also gonna have 2 eternal Runeterra opens. So I think they probably are gonna come back and make some adjustments to eternal. But for now, because eternal is not in rank right now, we are just gonna have a standard patch. First buff is to Nightfall, and this is gonna be Cygnus. So Cygnus becomes an elusive, right? So instead of a 6 cost 5/3, it becomes a 5 cost 3/3, and it loses 2 power. So it gets 1 cost less, loses 2 power, but it gets elusive, right? So it gets a really good keyword. It's a 5 mana 3/3 elusive, which is not bad when you just consider just by himself. But he also has the Nightfall effect that when you have Nightfall, you can still give an ally elusive. I think this is pretty good. I think actually the fact that it has elusive by itself means that it can keep elusive for the whole time. The previous Cygnus only had elusive for a round. This is pretty good change, because what you can do is that you can buff up the Cygnus. And what I'm thinking is, think of like stuff like Kayle decks, right? Kayle decks tend to be like elusive decks. Sometimes you can play like Kayle plus Bard, hint, hint, one of the decks I'm gonna recommend later. And you can just buff up Cygnus to be like a really big threat already with just elusive, and then potentially make one of your other big units like a Kayle elusive for a round. And that's pretty darn good to me. So I think this is a really good buff. Unfortunately, it doesn't help Nightfall, right? I don't think it's a card you're actually going to use in Nightfall, because Nightfall is pretty much dead, because Riot pretty much moved every Shadow Owls. A lot of the, actually, not only Shadow Owls, but they moved a lot of the good Nightfall cards to Eternal, right? Doom Beast is in Eternal now, not in Standard, for example. The 2 mana spell that used to draw you and activate a Nightfall effect is now also in Eternal. So all those nerfs to it, all those cards that got switched to Eternals make Nightfall not really be a real deck. And I don't think this buff to Cygnus really helps them. However, I think it could be really useful in other decks, and that's where I can see this card kind of shining. Then let's go to another Nightfall buff, and this is the Clothing Way. So Clothing Way goes from a 5 cost 5/4 to a 4 cost 4/3. So he loses a cost, but also loses a health and a power to make up for it. I don't think it needed to lose both. I think you can probably have done the health and left the power at 5 and still be okay. It's good. I mean, a 4 mana unit that can stun another follower for 2 turns. That's not bad, right? If you have the Nightfall effect, so that's pretty good. That's pretty good, right? Is there a deck that I can see that can actually use this? I don't know, right? I'm sure there's going to be some Rico Red's Overwhelm deck that could potentially have this in there. I just don't know if it's actually going to be efficient, right? So I'm a little bit meh on this change. Might actually see it included, might not. I can't really determine that. it's a decent change. I wish they would have kept the 5 power or at 4 health and not knocked down 2 of the stats, right? I think just one of the stats would have been okay. Then we have Moondreamer, which is our last of our quote-unquote Nightfall buff. So Moondreamer gets a Nightfall effect now, where if you're Nightfall with her, you reduce the card's cost by 1, and that's the card that you invoke. So if you invoke, I don't know, the 10 cost spell, you now only cost 9, right? Etc. etc. So that's the whole idea with this. You kind of get a cheap discount on that card that you invoke. It's okay. I don't think it's still gonna see play. Maybe I'm underestimating this, but I still don't think this is really moving the needle one way or the other. It's nice to get the cost reduction, but a lot of times it's not really gonna matter because this card is coming down on turn 5, and the Nightfall effect means that you have to have spell mana, play a card before this, and then actually play the Moondreamer, unless you have the Dust, the Dustbringer. I don't know. I don't see this really being a staple. I guess it's a nice invoke baddie, but I feel like I'd rather just have the heal from like Star Shaping, because at least Star Shaping is limited to only those really high cost invoke cards. Because this can invoke anything, you still have a good chance to whiff and not get something that great. Although, being reduced by 1 does make it a lot better, but I just don't think it's actually... I don't think it's actually necessary. So, I don't know. I don't expect this to play. Now, this one is a pretty cool change. Targaryen Tailstones. It used to be one of the worst Tailstones because it used to have Wish, Battlestar, and Blessing of Targaryen. And now, instead of Wish and Battlestar, it has Behold the Infinite and Hush. So this is more right up what Targaryen wants to do. This is a really good card now, in my opinion. Is it going to be a 3-off? No, right? Almost no Tailstone is a 3-off in almost any deck. I think the only Tailstones that was really a 3-off was the Ionian Tailstones. Right? Because you have Homecoming, you have everything. So that's the only time that you could say that a Tailstone was a 3-off. Every other Tailstones at most is like a 1 or a 2-off, as you see with the Piltover and Tailstone. I don't think this is any different. I think this is actually a good enough card now that you could potentially have it as a 1-off or a 2-off in your deck, because it gives you the opportunities, right? You can either have Behold the Infinite to get more value on invoking something important. You could go for Hush to get out of like a get out of jail card if you need it, or you can still go for the Blessing of Targaryen, which can potentially let you push lethal or save one of your units by giving it a stat buff. So I think all 3 cards are pretty decent, and that's the whole point of Tailstones. This should only really be like a 1 or 2 off in any deck that wants to play it. Let's move on to a Seer. So a Seer, the level up condition has been reduced from 13 to 12. Small buff, but could be significant, right? It lets us see a level up a little bit earlier. I guess now that Irelia is no longer in standard, it makes sense. By the way, this is kind of crazy when you think of Eternal, because now this is a direct buff to a Sea Irelia in the Eternal format, right? So just gotta be mindful of that when you're thinking of playing Eternal ladder. You might run into some Sea Irelias with this level of reduction, right? It's decent. I know what Riot's trying to do, right? They're trying to improve Sundisk, because without Seraph, Sundisk has kind of been horrible. Is that going to be enough to do it? I don't know. But at least it's nice because you can level up a Seer pretty quickly, especially if you have stuff like the Shepherd, right? Or stuff like Rockhopper that can advance this stuff by 2, Ancient Preparation advances by 2, so you can level up a Seer pretty quickly. We'll see if that's enough. In combination with this next buff, which is Nasus. Nasus goes from a 2-2 to a 3-3, and obviously gets the same on the level up. And again, another change that's meant to, I think, help Sundisk, but I think it's going to end up helping any Nasus Shadow Owl decks more than anything else, right? So instead of having like a Nasus Sundisk deck, I think this is a good buff for Shadow Owl decks. It just gets you a little bit closer to be able to actually have that Nasus be a 10-10 and be able to actually get the Spell Shield. Because once you get to the Spell Shield, it tends to be really difficult for opponents to really do anything about it. Now, unfortunately, we don't have Atrocity, right? We lost a lot of the tools that made Nasus Shadow Owls as strong as it once was. So I don't know if there is a room for that to really make its way back into the meta, but we'll have to see if someone get creative. For now, I'm down to experiment with making Nasus into a Sundisk champion. and see if we can actually level Nasus in that Sundisk version of the deck. So we'll see how that ends up going. I love this buff. So the next one is Glory Skull. You might not be aware that this is a card in the game because I don't think anybody ever played this card. But this card, instead of a 6 cost, it's not a 5 cost. And what it does is that, first of all, it costs 2 less for each different Ascended ally that you have played this game. What that means is that if you play a Seer, for example, and let's say you play your Nasus, this becomes a 1 cost card. And for 1 cost, you get to manifest a card from the Emperor's deck that costs 9 or less. A lot of the cards from the Emperor's deck are really, really, really good. The fact that you can manifest and pick out of 3 options exactly what you need in the situation is super underrated. I think this card is actually pretty nuts. The only thing that's going to be holding this card back is the fact that really to get the discount, you need to play it with like Sundisk deck. And again, I don't think that Sundisk is as strong as it once was without Seraph. But again, I know this is a standard patch, but a lot of these buffs also work for Eternal. And I think this buff is actually crazy in an Seer Seraph deck in Eternal. So I cannot wait to try this out in Eternal as well. For standard, we'll have to see if a Seer Nasus actually makes the cut to decide whether this card is actually going to be competitive or not. Then we have a buff to a card that was already very darn good. So Soul Harvest. Before, you had to spend 4 mana to be able to kill a champion. Now, you spend 3 mana to kill a champion. This is so good. It's still a little bit worse than, I guess, what Calling Strike used to be, because Calling Strike used to be fast speed. This is still slow speed, and you're spending the same amount of mana. But obviously here the flexibility is that you can spend 1 less mana to kill a follower instead. You can kill a follower with 2 mana. I think this card is nuts. I think this card was already nuts before. It's just that Shadow Owls was not that present in the meta. And now with the buff, it makes it even crazier. So I'll be very scared if I'm any champion like Veigar, Norra, I don't know, Seraphine, any champion that has less than 3 power. I'll be very scared to go against a Shadow Owl deck, because I know that this Soul Harvest can literally just kill my champion almost every single time. So it kind of reminds me a lot of the old Quietus before Quietus got reworked. I expect this card to be present in a lot of Shadow Owls control decks. Then we have a really fun buff here. So Kadregrin. Kadregrin is a 9-mana dragon that used to read, you give all your dragons +2/+2 everywhere. All your other dragons, he doesn't give himself +2/+2. Now, instead of +2/+2, it's going to be +4/+4. And I love this change. Does it make Kadregrin playable? Doubtful. But remember, you can actually cheat out Kadregrin 2 turns, I guess 1 turn earlier, if you play your 7-cost Eclipse Dragon. It discounts the next dragon by 2, so then you can play this on turn 8. I guess it's just 1 turn earlier. You can play this on turn 8 for 7 mana, and it will also buff your Eclipse Dragon by +4/+4. Having these really beefy dragons that the opponent has to deal with is a potential to snowball, because there are ways to cheat out, right? Not only the Eclipse Dragon, but you also have the 2-cost Dragon Caller, or whatever her name is, that reduces all your dragon cost by 1. So you could literally cheat out this Kadregrin turn 6, 7, or 8, depending on how high rolly you get your hand. And if you get it early, this is when this buff is going to come into place, because all your dragons are going to be super, super powerful. Now, if you actually drop this guy on turn 9, I think it might be a little bit too late for any stat buff to really matter. But who's to say? If you do have a good enough board with a bunch of dragons on the field still, it might actually make a difference, right? Buffing your Shyvana by +4/+4 is not small thing. I just don't know. I think it has to be cheated out earlier. I don't know if this is a good enough game-ending effect if it comes down on turn 9 or turn 10. It has to be something that comes down on turn 7 or turn 8 to really have an impact and let you snowball. So that's kind of how I see it. I think this card is not broken, but it's actually a very good consideration in some dragon decks where you can just try to greed out, trying to cheat this out early by having the Eclipse Dragon on the field. Or you can go Eclipse Dragon on 7, Asol on turn 8, Kadregrin on turn 9, and it's going to buff your Asol and your Eclipse Dragon to allow your Asol to level up really easily. So yeah, you can do it that way as well, regardless of which we want to do. But I think it's a really good buff. I think it's a really, really good buff. Then we have Priestess of Desert Light. So all she does now is that if you draw a champion, you grant a +2/+2. So if for some reason you don't get to summon the champion because you have you don't have 6 plus different champions in your deck, then instead you get +2/+2 on that whatever champion you draw. It's not bad, it's not horrible, but I don't know if it's good enough. I don't think this is good enough to make this card actually see play. It's still too expensive as a sets in my opinion. You want it to be able to just summon the champion, but heck, this buff doesn't really buff the champion that gets summoned. It just buffs the champion that gets drawn. So I think this buff, I see what Riot is trying to do, but I really don't think it's really gonna do anything for this card's playability to actually make her part of the meta. Then we go to Mirror Image. Now, Mirror Image used to be restricted to only copy 5+ power allies. Now, it can summon an exact copy of any ally. And this is going to create some very fun decks with LeBlanc. I'm not creative enough to think of those in the top of my head right now. But the fact that you cannot copy things that were not able to be copied before, that have 5 or less powers, could potentially lead to some fun shenanigans, right? I also like the fact that you can potentially copy a 4-power Assessor in Ashe LeBlanc if you need to. If you need to have additional drop, for example, and don't have another 5 drop that you like, and don't have another 5-power unit that you want to copy instead. So that's not bad either. Gives you some flexibility on what you want to copy, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, another good target for this, by the way, is copying like a Rednat, right? So if you already have a Rednat on the field, that's a 2/2, you can copy this, get a second Rednat on the field, buff everything else by +2/+2 again, and get another draw out of it. So there's already 2 good targets that Mirror Image has in the standard Ashe LeBlanc list, aside from all the other hits that he already had before. So I really, really like this. I think it's actually pretty good change if you can get that LeBlanc leveled up. Now this one is one of my favorite changes. I love Bandle Gunners. So I used to love the old school Tristana Bandle Gunners Shadow Owl deck that used to copy the Bandle Gunners with the card that used to just summon an exact copy of it. That was a 1/1. That way you could just attack for 8 impact. I used to love that deck. And this buff to Bandle Gunners kind of brings me back to that mentality. So Bandle Gunners now is a 10 cost unit. But every time that you summon a multi-region ally, the cost of Bandle Gunners gets reduced by 1. And guess what? Multi-region allies are not that hard to spam, because we have a card here called Grandfather Fade. Not only is Grandfather Fade a multi-region ally himself, but it also gives you a Hungry Outcast that's also a multi-region ally. So just by playing a Grandfather Fade, a single Grandfather Fade, this is already coming down to 8 costs, which is the cost that it had before. Now, the stats have been lowered to a 5/5, and now it only gets impact 3 times instead of 4 times. So the stats are a little bit lower. So I think you want to make sure that you get this down to at least 5 costs to make this a better card than what it used to be before. I don't think that's very hard to do in Tristana decks. I think Tristana decks can easily get 5, 6, 7 multi-region allies before you get to like turn 5, turn 6. Because not only did you have the Grandfather Fade, but you can also play the 4 cost that summons 2 the 4 cost Shadow Owl, Tenor of Terror that summons another one. So that's already 2. You can play the Mayor and then be able to summon something after that. Like, it's so good. It's so easy to reduce this. This is probably one of the easier cards that had this effect of getting the cost reduced that Riot has made, right? Like, think of like Burblefish, right? Burblefish can easily go to 0. That's probably the other one that's really good. But there's other 10 cost cards. Think of the Target one, the Arbiter of the Peak, right? That one is really hard to get down to like lower cost. You have the Scuttle Crab, I think it's called in Shadow Isles, that goes down based on deaths. That one can be really hard to lower down a lot of times. This is not going to be that hard, because at the same time that you're lowering this cost down, you're still summoning all these cheap multi-region allies. that the opponent has to deal with for you to just kick ass. So I like it. I love this buff. I think it's going to be a really good buff, and should see this card being played in any Tristana deck. Advanced Intel goes from a 1 cost to a 2 cost, but now it also draws you a card. That's not bad. Think of like Guiding Touch, right? Guiding Touch is a 2-mana draw 1 with the effect that you heal 2. This one is kind of the same way, except that the effect is that you plant 2 Flash Bombs to the top 8 cards of your opponent's deck. So definitely worse than Guiding Touch, and definitely worse than like Pel Cascade, based on the secondary effect that it has. But the fact that it's still a draw card in a deck like Kayle and Teemo that we already struggle to get a lot of draw, especially since, as you're gonna see below, your the draw card that you want to play on Kayle and Teemo ended up getting nerfed. So I think having this instead is pretty nice, and it's a cheap spell that you can play with your Flash Bomb Peddler or your Puff Cap Peddler to continue adding more Puff Caps or Flash Bombs into the opponent deck. So I think it's a good change, and nothing else that can be said about this. I don't mind main decking this. It's just, again, cycling a card. In a lot of times with Kayle and Teemo, you might have a couple turns where you have nothing to do, and you can just play this, and you just replace the card in your hand and become mana efficient. And potentially, if you have any of the peddlers in the field, you're adding more shrooms or more Flash Bombs into their deck as well. Deathless Knight goes from a 6 cost to 5 cost, and this is the dreams of memers everywhere. I think this card is very cool, right? So the way that this card works is that if it gets ephemeral, instead just gets +1/+1. Except that this also works if this card gets summoned with ephemeral to begin with. What I mean by that is, for example, Black Rose, the landmark, not Black Rose, oh shoot, what's it called? The 2-mana landmark, right? The one that Aragon played on Taliyah 6 to win Worlds last year. That 2-mana landmark that you capture one of your own allies, and every time you attack, you get to summon an ephemeral copy of it. Well, when you do that with this card being captured by it, the ephemeral copy that you summon with the Deathless Knight is actually just a regular copy. It's just gonna be a 6/6 Deathless Knight. So you're pretty much just getting a free Deathless Knight every time that you attack. So it's pretty cool. It can also work with the recall landmark, the one that you recall the unit to summon an ephemeral copy of it. That's even better, because it will summon this Death Knight right away as a 6/6, and 3 turns later you get another free Deathless Knight for 6/6. So I think there's going to be some fun memes here where you can print a bunch of Deathless Knights, and I'm excited to see how kind of this works out. I wish you had a better keyword than Fearsome, but Fearsome is not the worst of keywords to have either. Then Retire Reckoner is the last buff that we get this patch, and this card never saw play either. It goes from a 2/6 to a 3/6, still has the same effect, so it just gets 1 power buff. Is that enough to make this playable? I don't know. I don't think so. It could lead to some funny OTKs though with the Riven decks, but we'll see how that actually works out. I have a deck that I want to try out with this card, as you see in the deck recommendations later. We'll see if it's actually competitive or not, but I don't think that a single power stat buff is going to be enough. I'll be interested to see how that works out, right? Because this is literally just a weaker Varus, right? A Varus, once it's leveled up, it still has Overwhelm, has Quick Attack, and is getting +2 for every spell that you use, even without targeting him. So this is a much weaker Varus, and that's why I don't see it making sense in a lot of decks. So yeah. Then we move on to the nerfs, and there's quite a few nerfs here that Riot did. So first one is Ashe, obviously trying to hit that reputation decks. So now Ashe, instead of needing to see 4, it needs to see 5 units go to 0 power to level up. I think that's a fair nerf. I don't actually think that this is going to be a crazy nerf. Yes, you were winning a lot of games with Ashe LeBlanc by having a leveled up Ashe attack and get rid of the opponent's blockers. But I could tell you that most of the times with Ashe LeBlanc, you're really just winning just because you have these really big static units that just stay in the field and are trading efficiently with the opponent that the opponent cannot do anything about, and then you just rally with indecisive taxation. I think you're winning more often through that than you were with the Ashe level up. But regardless, it is going to slow it down in certain game states where you could have actually won with Ashe, and now you're going to be one off. So interesting change. I think it's a good change. It's a fair change. but I don't think it's going to move the needle too much one way or the other with Ashe LeBlanc. This change might do more harm than the Ashe change. So this one is making Reckoning a 7-cost spell. And I'm so sad because, as you all know, Reckoning is the freaking symbol, the avatar that I use for YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and everything. I was so excited that Reckoning had come back into the meta, but Reckoning is gone again. I do think that 1 extra cost kind of just kills this card. I think people tend to underrate how important 1 extra cost can be. And this is not something that you want to be saving 7 mana for, right? You really don't want to be... It was already awkward a lot of times to have to keep 6 mana to be able to threaten the Reckoning. Having to keep 7 mana to threaten a Reckoning is too much. I don't think you play this card. I think this card is dead in the game. In the Ashe LeBlanc decks. All Out, unfortunately, is the only nerf that Samira got. And this is not even a direct nerf to Samira. It's a nerf to her champion spell and a support card, but it doesn't really do anything to address the problem with Samira, Riot. How could you miss Samira? She's in so many decks, Riot. Ha! Anyways, Samira All Out, so no Samira's. All Out goes from a 2-2 to a 2-1. Sure. It loses the health, and that's going to matter. That is going to matter in a lot of cases, because the All Out was the best card in that deck. I'm not going to deny that. It will allow for removal from stuff like P&Z to become more effective, actually ruin your ally, the unit that gets buffed, etc., etc. But think about this. Varus Samira can just replace this with something else, right? You have Blood for Blood, right? Gives you +2/+2 still. You can still play Momentous Choice, get that extra 2 health. I don't think this is hitting the big deck, which is Varus Samira. And it's a little bit sad to see that. It does affect elusives, but the elusives are getting a lot of other nerfs as you see below, that I think you need to actually hit Samira. There's so many other Samira decks out there that were not elusive or were not Leona Samira that needed to be touched because of Samira's brokenness. So disappointing, but it's a good change. It's gonna slow them down. I just don't think it's enough. I agree with the change. Don't get me wrong. I agree with the change, the 2-1, but I wish they would have done more to Samira directly. So let's go to those elusive nerfs that I was talking about. Burblefish goes from 6 cost to 8 cost. I think this is actually a much bigger nerf than people realize. Having to play 2 extra spells before this thing costs 0 can be a big deal, because a lot of times you could potentially get some awkward hands where you have like multiple Burblefish in your hand, and you really want to get rid of them in your hand and not out of your hand, and that's going to take longer to actually get rid of them from your hand. So I think this is actually a really good nerf to Burblefish. Might actually be enough to kill the card, but I don't think so. We'll have to see. The most powerful play that you could do is have Shelly in turn 5 and already have your Burblefish at 0 cost or close to that. Not being able to do that on turn 5 or turn 6 is definitely a big deal, and might actually be the reason why this card doesn't really see play anymore. So again, we'll see how it actually shapes out, but I think this nerf is actually humongous. And then Inferna also gets touched up, goes from 5 health to 4 health. I think it's a fair change. It does make her, I guess, removable by, like, if you have a Mystic plus I guess if you have like double Mystic, for example, you can remove her. You don't have to rely on just like a Head Splitterator. You could potentially challenge her with like Sett right away on turn 5 and remove her because she only has 4 health. So there is a lot of things that are gonna be able to kill her now that she has 4 health. I don't think it's gonna matter as much though. I think you still can get a lot of value from her draw, which is what she was good at, and that should be enough to still keep Inferna as an inclusion in any of these Bilgewater elusive decks that want to pop around. But again, I don't think you have to worry about Fist Samira anymore. I don't think Fist Samira is good anymore because of the nerf to Burblefish and even the nerf to All Out. So I think Fist Samira got hit really hard, and you're gonna see that Leona Samira also technically got hit very hard. But the other Samira decks, whether it's Samira Bandle City or Samira Varus, are still left pretty much untouched. So here we go with the Leona. So now Leona, similar to Ashe, Leona's level up effect has gone up by 1. So instead of 4, it's now going to be 5. this is actually very good nerf. A lot of times you were really just dropping Leona leveled up already on turn 5, allowing you to right away get the barrier. Forcing the opponent to have to drop Leona without her already being leveled up is a big deal because it does make it vulnerable to certain removal, like its Obliterator that were damage-based removal that couldn't go through a Leona that had a barrier. There's a lot of situations where I was playing Karma Sett against like a Leona Samira where I wish I could just Obliterate a Leona, but the Leona will come down leveled up and just have barrier right away, preventing it from being able to just effectively kill her. So this is a good nerf, delays the level up, just adds a little bit of a slowdown to this deck, which I think was necessary in combination with the Sun Guardian nerf, which now goes from a 2-3 to a 2-2. It should slow them down and prevent them from becoming such an inevitable threat that you have to deal with, right? Because eventually this card gets too out of control. As it will come down as a 3-3, right? But as a 3-3, I can remove it with like an aftershock before the opponent has a chance to play another Sun Guardian. So I think these nerfs are really good because it allows P&Z cards to be able to actually hit this stuff even better than it used to be before. Then we get our Karma nerf, guys. So this is our Karma nerf. She loses 1 health. Now, okay, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that it's not significant, right? 1 health is a big deal, right? 1 health is a big deal. It does make her, like, if you drop her on level, she's gonna die to an aftershock. If you drop her leveled up, she could die to a double mystic. It does make a big deal. But it's not the nerf that's really going to slow down what Karma decks are doing, right? You can still drop down Karma on turn 5 and then place your bets and then do your coin shenanigans and then refill your mana and then tag out to save your Karma and just do it all over again. So I don't think it fixes the problem of Karma when she comes down on turn 10, just being able to kind of create that quote-unquote unfun game state, but we'll kind of see how that actually ends up shaping out. It's a nerf, and it is gonna matter in certain game states. I just don't think it's gonna matter as many times as other times. Now, Caustic Rift also gets a nerf, so we do have some nerf here to the P&Z package, but the nerf I think is pretty interesting, right? So the base cost of the card goes up to 4. However, the flow cost is still the same. While before, flow will reduce the cost by 1 to make it cost 2, now flow reduces the cost by 2, which still makes it cost 2. So I think it's a very fair nerf. It does make the base cost a little bit more expensive, which I think is good. It's forcing the player to have to really be able to trigger that flow if they want to make sure that the Caustic Rift is able to be used for cheaper. I really like this. I really like this nerf. I think it's fair. Caustic Rift was really dominating. Making a lot of strategies feel pretty bad against just auto losing to Caustic Rift. Drum Solo also gets hit, and this is the card that I was talking about earlier when I mentioned Teemo Caitlyn. This is probably the best draw card for Caitlyn Teemo, so it sucks that this got nerfed for that deck, but it is a well-deserved nerf because Drum Solo has been one of the best draw cards in the game for quite a while. Instead of reducing the cards that it draws by 2, it's reducing the cost of those cards by 1. So it should prevent some blowout conditions where the opponent's going to be drawing some crazy card, like I guess Disintegrate, and then just have a 0 cost Disintegrate for the rest of the game, for example, or any other random blowout card, right? So I think this is very fair. It reduces the things that we have to play around. Now that we only have to play around 1 mana, it stops the opponent from being able to tap out to 0 mana and still be able to have an answer for whatever you want to do. Because that always feels bad when you try to go for lethal and a 0 mana, the opponent is able to just blow you out because they have a 0 cost spell in their hand. So this could still get there, but for the most part, most spells are going to just cost 1 or 2, etc., and should prevent some of that feels bad feelings that you get from going against a Drum Solo player. Opulent Foyer has been a card that has been dominating Gwen decks for a while. You remember Gwen Katarina. Most recently, you have like Gwen Quinn. So this nerf is more addressing the Gwen Quinn type of decks. So what this is doing now is that Foyer no longer works with Rally, right? Or with Scout. So it doesn't work with Rally. It doesn't work with Scout. you need to have the attack token at the round start. So now the effect is round start. So you need to have the attack token on round start for a ghostly band to be summoned. So this means that when you have the scout, which is the biggest synergy, you no longer get a second ghastly band. This is a huge nerf. Probably one of the biggest nerfs to a synergy that I have ever seen. So I expect this to make that deck pretty much unplayable, to be honest. I don't expect to see Gwen anymore, because this is the whole reason that you needed this. Man, Riot doesn't like Gwen. Have you realized that? The moment that Gwen finds someone else other than Misfortune, Riot says, no, you need to go back to Scouts. You cannot play with Gwen. So I feel bad for Gwen. She's going to go back to just being the Misfortune pet. But yeah, it was a little bit annoying to deal with Foyer. I can't deny that. Remember when we talked about Drum Solo and getting blown up as zero cost cards? This is exactly the same strategy here, right? So I think that's exactly what I said yesterday during the reveal stream, and also what they're saying right here. It feels bad to lose to a zero cost spell. So now the Ambitious Cultist only has that for 1 round. After that, the opponent cannot be holding on to a zero cost spell. It will go back to costing 2, which I think is more than fair, because that way you're not playing around a zero cost spell for the whole game and getting blown out when you think that the opponent might not have an answer. So at least opponent's gonna have to always have 2 mana if they want to play whatever spell they got from the Ambitious Cultist. Additionally, the fact that this is only 0 for 1 turn should actually slow down some of those Varus Samira decks, because now you don't have a 0 cost spell forever to be able to level up your Samira quicker. We'll see how big of a nerf this actually is. And then lastly, the last change is just Prank. So it's not really a nerf or a buff, it's kind of just a change in general. So they removed the -2/0 from the pool that targets unit, and also removed the -2 vulnerable. And instead, so they removed the -2 power from the units from the pool, so you can no longer hit that. And then buff the vulnerable one. The vulnerable used to be -1 and vulnerable, now it does -2 and vulnerable, which makes this one a really tempting choice now in certain situations. And then the 2 cost increase only works for spell. For units and for landmarks, it's only a 1 cost. So it's a nerf if you hit a landmark, because now you're only increasing the cost by 1, or same thing if you hit an equipment, you're only increasing the cost by 1 compared to 2. So that is actually a big nerf, but I do think there is a buff. I think in general it's probably a nerf. In general it's a nerf, because not being able to have a unit cost 2 more, or a landmark, or an equipment, is actually a big deal. So that sucks. That actually is a nerf. That is a nerf, but it's fine. We'll see how that actually shakes out in theory. Lastly, I think that's all the buffs and the nerfs. So we kind of went through all the reaction there, and I walked through the patch. They're here. Congratulate the winners of the Runeterra Opens. Congratulations to Card Gamer, Key, and Tabuta. Card Gamer is a super crack player, one of the best players. So very happy to see that he has won. They're going to fix some of the matchmakings on the Runeterra Open. They're going to add Eternal for best of 3 challenge. And they're going to make some of the Ruthless Rumbles a limited entry sometime later this month. Then we have the Nets qualifiers. So that's going to be the Nets Runeterra Open. It's happening on the 13th, 14th. And it's going to be a World Qualifier Open. So if you win that one, you get automatically qualified for Worlds. So I'm definitely going to be competing on this one. Although I'm going to be in vacation in the Dominican Republic during that weekend. So we'll see how he ends up. My flight is on the 14th. So that's gonna be a little bit awkward. I might have to like literally buy Wi-Fi on the plane just so that I can play my rounds if I make it to round 2. So we'll see how that shakes out. And then we have a sneak peek at the rank icons. We actually get 1 for Eternal, 1 for Standard. So that's actually kind of cool. And yeah, the rest is just okay. Starter decks are gonna get the standard cards, which is good. And then the Runeterra Turn 3 anniversary. So make sure that you start joining here in May so that you get some of these nice goodies here on your account. We have some bug fixes here. Anything here that's actually related to PvP? No. I guess this one is cool. The mana cost for Darkened Follows will not reduce by Go Get It. That's actually important. Disintegrate effect will trigger multiple times. That's important. Effective miss, that's important. What else? Is there anything else here? Transform effect, podcast crush. Okay. I don't think so, right? I don't think there's anything else here that really affects us. I mean, there's a lot of bugs, and I'm pretty nice with that. Fits a nation with fading memories, and it. Whoa, 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 whoa. That's actually a big change. We always thought that that was on purpose. That fading memories and iterative improvement could not pop the spell shield. We thought that that was always on purpose. But now they actually pop the spell shield. That's actually kind of cool. Okay. That kind of takes getting some used to. That's fine. Fits an issue where Treasure Target create itself. That's funny. That's good. Okay. So that's it for the patch notes breakdown. It took me a lot longer than I expected because there's a lot of changes more than I expected. So let's jump right ahead for the decks. I'm going to start with some decks covering the new cards that got buffed. And then we transition to some more meta decks that I expect to still be popular when the patch comes out this Wednesday. So stick around and let's go ahead to the deck recommendations. So let's jump ahead to those deck recommendations. And like I said, I'm going to start with some fun cards that got buffed and then move on to some more standard decks. The first deck is going to be Samira. So I'm going to punish Riot for not nerfing Samira directly. Obviously, I'm going to show you guys Samira Varus at the end of the video. But the first one is a different Samira deck, and this is going to be Samira Tristana. And this deck has actually already been doing okay. I know there was a player high in orbit that was playing this deck a lot in the beginning of the season. I don't know if they're still playing. I know also Quacker was also playing a lot of Samira Tristana at one point. But it is a deck that actually has been already around. Now, the idea here is that now we can add the Bandle Gunners, right? So the Bandle Gunners is the new addition that we have added to this deck. We have a lot of multi-region allies, right? So we do have the Bandle Commando gets me the Alcats. We have the Grandfather Fate, which again counts as 2. We have the Grumble Slug. We have whatever the Mayor gives us, and we have the Tenor of Terror. So it's not too difficult to actually get to a position where we can actually get the Bandle Gunners to be a lot cheap to actually be able to bring them down. Now, the other thing is that the Bandle Gunner has Spell Shield and has Impact 3, right? It's not updated on Runeterra AR, but that was the buff. So with Spell Shield and Impact 3, it makes it an amazing target for our Might, for example, because we know we can give her Overwhelm, and the Impact 3 is pretty much a fervor on a stick, on a unit that the opponent has to block. And you could potentially be summoning this unit for 5, 4, 3, or even lower cost, depending how many multi-region allies you have summoned in this game. So this card I think is absolutely nuts in this style of deck, and I actually am super excited to try out this deck. It's probably not going to be the first deck that I showcase to you all on YouTube, because we just did a Samira deck with Samira Varus, but it's definitely something that I have my eye on to actually be a super aggressive deck that can have a lot of value. So that's Samira Tristana. My second deck recommendation today is going to be more on the meme side. And this is going to be Kalista Sett, but ignore the champions, because what we care about here is Deathless Knight. So Deathless Knight got buffed to be a 5 cost. And this is supposed to be a Deathless Knight printer using Ionia, because we can print Deathless Knight in 2 ways. The Black Flame. The Black Flame, when you capture the Deathless Knight, every time that you attack and you summon another Deathless Knight, the ephemeral Deathless Knight is just going to be a 6/6 regular Deathless Knight. It doesn't keep the ephemeral. I tested this on the AI before I actually recommended this deck to you all to make sure that it worked that way. But even though it gets summoned with ephemeral on it, the ephemeral gets removed and you just stay with a 6/6 Deathless Knight. Same thing with the God Willow Seedling. You can recall your Deathless Knight, summon an ephemeral copy of it, which is not going to be ephemeral. It's not going to be a 6/6 Deathless Knight. And you're going to get another one 3 turns later that's going to be in the field. So obviously the idea here is that you're kind of spamming the field with the Deathless Knights. The other combos that we have here is Soul Cleave. You kill one and you get 2. So for 3 mana, you get to summon a second Deathless Knight. You can do Halloween Return. Halloween Return is kind of cool because this is your strongest follower in the whole deck. Nothing else has more than 5 power. So as long as your Deathless Knight has died, you're guaranteed to draw to summon another Deathless Knight, and you give all the enemies -1 this round, which are really good. It's really good to allow the Deathless Knight with Fearsome to be able to push the damage through. So kind of nice. So these are the things that allow us to kind of copy that Deathless Knight. Then we have stuff like Mark of the Isles, which is really good because he ends up being a +3/+3 to the Deathless Knight. It's going to be a +3/+3, and he doesn't keep the ephemeral from the Mark of the Isles. So this is literally a 1 mana +3/+3, which is absolutely nuts as a comeback to it. Soul Harvest, because Soul Harvest got buffed, and it's a nice way to remove a lot of the opponent's units. Deny to protect ourselves. Harrowing, because every Death Knight that gets summoned by the Harrowing is going to stay as a 6/6 without ephemeral. And then we have a lot of draw here, so Disciple and Sentry, as well as the Sinning Thousand Tales. These are also good targets for us to put under the Black Flame or the Gap Willow Seedling if necessary, if we don't actually get our Deathless Knight. So that's why I prefer those. And the Mixologist just to kind of heal us and keep us a little bit healthy and potentially give us some comp value. The reason I like Sett is so that we just have a nice beefy challenger stick that we can get advantage of, and Kalista, because Kalista will also summon a Deathless Knight, and it will not be ephemeral, and it will actually stay on the field, again allowing you to just print those Deathless Knights if you need to. Is this deck playable? Absolutely, probably not, but it's a fun one to try out and see how it works out, especially now that, you know, we lost Hacker, so I think trying out different ephemeral things might actually be very interesting to see how it kind of works out. Let's move on to Retire Reckoner. So this deck is all about the Retire Reckoner buff, and this is going to be Riven Vayne. So this deck, I'm trying to play it kind of like a Vayne Rumble. Before Rumble got moved to Eternal, this is how you used to play Vayne Rumble. You kind of used to just buff up your Rumble and then have something that has Spell Shield, Quick Attack, Overwhelm, etc. It's not as good as this because obviously the Retire Reckoner doesn't have Spell Shield, but the idea is that we can use Riven instead of Rumble, get all these blades as well with the Squire, as well as with the 2 Squires and the Rune Weaver. We can get all these blades that we can put onto the Retire Reckoner to actually be able to make him really, really big and be able to just push a ton of damage with the Retire Reckoner. Obviously, we also have access to Cataclysm, we have access to the Tumble, which again just lets us have this really big Overwhelm unit that has a pretty good health stat to be able to kind of potentially push lethal, Form Up, Brothers Bond, Repose as ways to save him or push more damage. And then we have the Darking Aegis and the Darking Ballista that we can also put to the Reckoner, adding additional power. The Great Hammers obviously doesn't really do much with the Reckoner because it really has Overwhelm, but the Great Hammers are for the times that where you don't actually have the Overwhelm, and you can put that on a Vayne or something else like that, or even your Ranger Knight Defector. So yeah, so that's the idea. We have some really key units here that the opponent has to deal with. They have to deal with your champions, they have to deal with your Defector and with your Reckoner. Any one of these units can be a really big threat to their life, and as soon as we start baiting out all that removal, we could potentially set up for this Reckoner to go in and push damage and win us the game. Then we move on to the next deck. And this one, I was trying to find a deck that could work with Priestess of Light. And then I remember going against this player weeks ago. It must have been like 2 weeks ago now. That was playing this Freya Shwima deck, playing the Secret Keeper that really, really caught my attention. So I kind of copied their deck list, and this is what you see right here. Now, the idea with this deck is multiple. Warmother Skull, right? So Warmother Skull is probably your main win condition. The idea is that you're able to summon all those champions from the Secret Keeper, or be able to summon Kahiri with the Warmother Skull for free, or obviously the Wrath of the Failure as well. So that's the idea that with Warmother Skull, you have a lot of good hits here. Obviously, the main game plan is that you want to keep your Secret Keeper in your hand. If you keep your Secret Keeper in your hand, you get 2 champions that are leveled up in the bottom of your deck. Then you can predict with Ancient Prep, Scrying Sands, to be able to shuffle those champions, or be able to summon them later with Warmother Skull. As soon as you have the champions in the bottom of your deck, when you play your Priestess of Desert Light, you're guaranteed to draw them you don't summon them because you didn't start with 6 champions, but you're guaranteed to draw them and have that champion get +2/+2. There's a lot of good level of champions that are +2/+2 could be absolutely amazing with. So that's kind of the idea here. You grab one of those level of champions with the Priestess with the light, and just walk up +2/+2. Obviously, again, the other idea here is that we are playing Kahiri as well with some predicts like Ancient Prep and Scrying Sands to be able to actually buff the Kahiri. And once the Kahiri is buffed up enough, then you can potentially summon him multiple times with Warmother Skull. The Kahiris guarantee themselves that you never kind of run out of units to summon from your deck, because anytime Kahiri is summoned, he will create another copy on his deck, on your deck, right? So you will always have at least one target for Warmother Skull and never are going to be in the risk of like decking out. The rest of the cards are just kind of supporting cards. Ancient Hourglass is nice because you can get more champions if you're Ancient Hourglass, your Secret Keeper. Quicksand, Avalanche, Ice Shard to protect ourselves, Rod Negation to present like some lethal damage, and then ramp, right? We just want to ramp to the Warmother Skull, so that's the Winter Touch and the Wild Mysticism, and then Harsh Winds to protect ourselves against the Samira Varus or any other decks that are just trying to OTK us before we can actually do anything against them. Alright, so that is 4 decks down. Deck number 5 is going to be Sundisk. So obviously Nasus and Asir both got buffed, so I wanted to try a Sundisk. So here is this deck. 3 Asir, 2 Nasus, 1 Renekton. I like the 1 Renekton as an alternate win condition, and it also counts as a different unit for a Glory Core, a Glory Call, right? So I like Renekton. Ancient Preparations to 2 level Asir. Armory could potentially 2 level Renekton. Sundisk, of course. Then we have Doomkeeper, Pakai, Rockhopper, Soothsayer, Rock Shepherd, and Golden Ambassador. I think this is kind of like the standard cards that you usually see in a lot of the Sundisk decks. Obviously, a little bit worse without Seraph, but it should still do the trick, especially if your Golden Ambassador hits Renekton or Nasus. It can potentially allow you to advance their win condition even more. Then it's Sauce and Ruthless Predator to try to level up our Renekton. Or also the Ruthless Predator gives us the additional 2 power that we need for Nasus to be able to level him up. Desert Duel, again, try to level up our champions. Rod Negation. Glory Skull is, I think, an amazing card now, especially if we can get this to 1 cost by summoning at least 2 Ascended allies. I think this card is super underrated with the value that it can give us, because a lot of the cards in the Emperor deck are pretty busted, and if you can manifest them for 1 mana, makes them even worth it. And then lastly, Castigate to be able to get rid of the opponent's units, as well as our own board if we need to try to get our Nasus to 10. So it's actually kind of cool, because sometimes if your board is too heavy, you can kill your own followers to actually get your Nasus to that point where he's going to be over a 10 power to actually swing. Is this deck going to be playable? We'll see. I'm not sure yet, but we'll have to see how it kind of shapes out. So yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So the next deck is going to be Bard Kayle. And the reason I want to showcase Bard Kayle is because what I talked about with the Cygnus buff, right? So Cygnus got buffed so that now Cygnus himself has elusive permanently. And it's also a 5 cost. I think that buff is really, really good for Cygnus, especially in this style with a Bard deck where you can just potentially have your Cygnus go up to 4/4, 5/5, 6/6, etc. based on how many times it hits it, right? So the idea here is that the Cygnus is going to get buffed up by all the Bard chimes, and then eventually we can potentially give our Kayle elusive, right? So we can play, I don't know, we can play something like Tailstones, or we can play Guiding Touch, or play another unit like a bird, and then follow with the Cygnus, with the Nightfall, put it on the Kayle, and now you have this big elusive attacker that the opponent cannot really do anything about, combined with the Cygnus also being elusive. So that's the idea why I wanted to suggest this deck. Again, playing off the Cygnus buff and also playing off the Tailstones buff. The Tailstones buff is really nice for this deck as well, because sometimes the Hush can be really good at dealing with the opponent's attack. The Blessing of Target is going to be really good in this deck because it's counting so much towards the Bard level up and could potentially get some of your elusives into a really good spot, like the Mihira can allow her to survive and actually get to a point where she just stays on the field. And then even the Invoke, if you find yourself running out of resources. So all options here are really good for this deck. So It's a Kayle deck with bar. It's nothing new, but I do like the idea of being able to have a Cygnus as an alternate win condition to make one of your big units, whether it's Kayle or whatever else later in the games gets really big, make them even big, make them an elusive threat. So, and a cool combo that you can potentially do, for example, is that if you have a Horaci on the field, let's say you play Horaci on the opponent's attack turn, then on your attack turn, you can play Cygnus on the Horaci to give the Horaci elusive, and now you have elusive, a spell shield that can then transfer over to another unit as well. So a lot of cool combos I think that you can do with Cygnus. Again, I think he's going to be better off in decks like this than he will be in actual Nightfall decks. The rest of the deck is pretty straightforward. Burr, Esmus, and Cosmic Binding are the stuff that we're picking from the bar package. Burr and Esmus are automatic on almost every single deck. And the Cosmic Binding because I do want the stun to be able to deal with like Samira Varus, etc. Any deck that's going to have like a really big attack into us. Divine Cleric for the healing, same thing with the Youngling, especially because this Youngling is going to get bigger and bigger with the chimes. Winged Messenger as an elusive threat. Mihira, it's just Mihira. If she sticks on the field, opponent's going to have a really bad time. Falling Star to stop the opponent's attack is a nice way, a 2-mana deal 4. Amazing. And then Guiding Touch and Pale Cascade, great draws that combine with the bar synergy to actually get us there. I wish I could make space for Solani, but I don't think it makes sense in this deck. I think I already have too many expensive cards. But, you know, maybe somebody else can actually make space for her. I just don't think that it actually works here. But I think I'm actually kind of excited to try out this deck. Next, we go to Dragons. So there's going to be another Targon Demacia, right? Another Targon deck. And the idea here is how I was talking about in my patch notes breakdown. It's all about the Kadregrin, right? So the Kadregrin, we're playing this deck because of the buff that he got. So now Kadregrin can add +4/+4 to all your dragons. The dragons that we have in this deck that take advantage of that are going to be Shyvana, Asol, Eclipse Dragon, the second Kadregrin, and the Screeching Dragon. It's really good with the Screeching Dragon because of the Challenger. I think it's really good with Asol and Eclipse Dragon because it makes them even bigger threats that the opponent has to deal with. And that's all we need. That's all we need because we are playing triple Dragon's Clutch to actually be able to get those dragons in our hand. I don't think I really like a lot of the cheaper dragons. Because I mean, I guess they could be good once you have the Kadregrin, but I really don't like the cheaper dragons. I don't think they give us enough values. I think instead what I want to do is try to cheat out these big dragons earlier, right? So that's why we have the Herald of the Dragons and the Eclipse Dragon as a 3-off, because we can always play Eclipse Dragon on 7 and then play Kadregrin on turn 8, right? As by costing 2 less, cost 7 mana. If we have the Herald of the Dragon, we can even do that combo even earlier. We can play Herald of the Dragon, Eclipse on 6, and Kadregrin on turn 7, which then makes all our other dragons a lot more powerful, especially if you have the Shyvana already on the field. I still do like the Dragon Guard though. I think the Dragon Guard can be really nice because it's like a pseudo heal with your Fury triggering twice. And it's also a really good stat line as a 3/4. The Cosmic Only to keep myself healthy. We have the Silent and Suppress, get rid of equipment, etc. Form Up, Guiding Touch, Spell Cascade, pretty good combat tricks, single combat, and then Sunburst to deal with some pesky units that you might not have enough stat buffs to deal with right away, but you need to kill them right away. So pretty good mid-range deck. Obviously, you're either winning through just the dragons as well with Overwhelm. If you have the Kadregrin +4/+4, it makes the Overwhelm on the Dragon's Clutch even better. Or you can just win with the Asol and then do it all day invoke shenanigans. So, yeah. The next one, now we kind of start moving on to some of the decks that only got like minor changes, but already were kind of meta. The first one is Teemo Caitlyn, right? I showcased a couple weeks ago now that Teemo Caitlyn list that we hit rank 1. This is pretty much the absent list. I do cut one Jump Solo because it got nerfed, and instead I add 2 Advanced Sentinel which got buffed. The other card that I ended up cutting, I think, was the other 6 drop, the one that doubles the damage on your traps, right? So I ended up cutting that, and I ended up cutting 1 Jump Solo, and instead added 2 Advanced Intels, which again I think is a really good cycle card. I think potentially this could be a 3-off in this deck. I just need to test it out and see how that works out. I think this deck is actually kind of solid. I like the fact that we no longer have to deal with like Fist Samira, Unfortunately, we still don't really have an answer for Varus Samira, right? So we still have an answer for the super aggressive decks. So that could be a little bit problematic for us to deal with if the opponent is able to go faster than us. If we're not able to stabilize with the peddlers and our Caitlyn and hit their key units, then they kind of end up running us over before we can actually get enough shrooms and enough traps to actually win. But if you can actually get to that point, you could definitely just be able to kind of take over the game, especially with the advanced intel, again, allowing you to cycle and get another useful card while being able to still add multiple traps if you have any of those on the field. I really like this card in this deck now. I think it's actually an amazing buff. It's really, really good. But not a lot that I need to say about this deck because you're all familiar with Kayle and Teemo. The next one is LeBlanc Ashe. Now, you might be thinking, why are you recommending this? This deck got nerfed. Well, I tell you that even though it got nerfed with Ashe and Reckoning, it also got buffed with the mirror image. And I think the mirror image buff might be bigger than people are giving it credit for. Because now, again, it allows you to copy the Assessor. If for some reason you haven't played the half card yet and this Assessor comes as a 4-power unit, it lets you copy the Assessor to get more draw, which is really nice. It also lets us copy Redna, for example. So if a game goes really late, we can actually copy Redna and get even more value from having Redna on the field. And that's really what I'm looking for. And this is the biggest part why I think Ashe LeBlanc will still be a good deck in this meta. It has a good matchup into Varus Samira. I expect Varus Samira, as you'll see here in my deck recommendations later, to still be one of the top decks, to be actually the top deck in the game. And Ashe LeBlanc has a good matchup into it because they have a much harder time dealing with the freezes. That's why this version is also playing main deck in 2 flash freeze in addition to the 2 harsh rings, right? We get rid of all the reckoning and we kind of go more into the freezes. So triple brittle, double flash freeze, double harsh rings. We still have the bloody business. We still have the health buffs to actually just push that opponent into awkward situations by just kind of freezing their hand when they're freezing their big units when they least expect it. So that's why I expect this deck to still be very popular, and I recommend you still play if you need to. And if you play the Trifarian Assassin version, you might actually also have good matchups into Karma Set, which is another deck that did not get touched in the patch notes. Then we go for Norra Veigar, right? So Norra Veigar is another deck that was already very popular. The only thing here is that we're playing Triple Soul Harvest. So pretty straightforward. If you're familiar with Norra Veigar, you kind of have the best of both worlds here. You can win through Veigar. You have the Catalyzer, Sentinel, Desanada, and Veigar himself to do a lot of damage with Darkness. This is probably the best Darkness deck out there, even better than Senna Veigar, in my opinion. The other way that you win is just by sticking a Norra, having Norra level up, and then you have all these portals that are coming out with really big, beefy units. So the point of Norra here is that you're able to just have these portals that are giving you kind of these blockers that the opponent is not able to deal with, and you can eventually slowly chip them down to then burn them out with the Static Sentinel or the Veigar, or eventually, if they cannot deal with an aura, all these units can actually add up and just push them damage. Obviously, the idea with this deck is that you have a lot of control tools. We're playing the Minimorph. That way we don't have to worry about spell shields. We can just play this Minimorph right away on a Samira or a Varus without having to commit to the Minimorph. We do still play the Vengeance, so we are having 4 removal here. Portapalooza, draw and portals, pulsing samples for projectile units. Soul Harvest can kill almost anything in the game. We still play Quietus because we need the equipment to be able to get rid of the equipment. Pytos to get rid of spell shield. So if you don't have Minimorph and you do need to deal with a spell shield, you play Vengeance first and then Pytos to follow up. And then Haste Pack, Limbs, etc. for additional draw. Pretty straightforward. Again, no need to say a lot about this. It's going to be a really good deck in the meta. Then the next one is Taliyah. Taliyah Malphite is a really underrated deck that has been making some waves in this current patch. I think nothing got touched here. So I expect this deck to also be good on the next patch. Especially because the worst matchup for this deck was that Fizz Samira. Those elusives were really bad for this deck. So being able to not have to worry about those elusives is a big, big deal, right? We do still, I still like stuff like the Quicksand to be able to deal with like the Varus Overwhelm. So I still do play that. And in case that we run into any other elusives, for the most part, you're trying to just build a pretty big board, stun the opponent's board with a leveled up Malphite, and kind of go from there. Ideally, you want to have the Salt Spire and be able to copy that with Taliyah so that you get the value. You can also do it with the Dragon's Roost, but I usually like copying the Salt Spire the best if you have that option, so that it gets someone right away. The great combo is if you have the Rock Bear Shepherd on the field and you're able to copy the Hibernating Rock Bear with the Taliyah. You end up getting this chain where you just summon a bunch of units in a single turn, and it feels amazing. We have stuns here to be able to deal with the opponent's units, strike, quicksand, and then sunburst as well as Riot Negation to set ourselves up for a potential lethal once we have the Malphite on the field. And Stonebreaker is a really good removal tool against stuff like Veigar, etc. that only have 4 health. So that's Malphite Taliyah. The other meta deck that I expect to kind of make a splash is Illaoi Jarvan. And again, similar to Ashe LeBlanc, I expect this deck to become more popular for 2 reasons. First of all, the main counter to this deck was Priestess, Ashe LeBlanc, and I think a lot of people are not going to play Ashe LeBlanc just because of the nerf to Reckoning and the nerf to Ashe. It's this thing that happens that even if Ashe LeBlanc is actually a good deck, still, people are not going to play it just because he got nerfed, so they don't think it's good enough. So the fact that Ashe LeBlanc is semi-gone should allow the massive strategies to go higher. The second thing is that this deck does have a good matchup against Varus Samira, right? Because you have access to stuff like Tentacle Smash to get rid of the units, you can make your tentacles really big, and if the opponent doesn't deal with those tentacles early, you can just take over the game. You have a lot of ways to remove their key units with single combat, Cataclysm, Tentacle Smash, that the opponent has to be very careful. Even Riptide Sermon actually gets us there. So I expect this deck to make a lot of waves again. This is the list that I decided to showcase for today. I'm actually excited to play this out. Jarvan is also really good at getting rid of some of the opponent's units when you play him, when you have the attack token of Sett. So yeah, not a lot that can be said about this deck. Just kind of set up for the big tentacles. Try to mulligan for your Watchful Idol. The bigger your tentacles, the more likely chance you have of winning, because then it's a very good chance that you can get Illaoi leveled up, or that you can potentially have the Nanacaboros to actually percent lethal. And obviously the Cataclysm is your best friend to percent lethal with Illaoi when the opponents least expect it. Next, of course, I had to suggest you all Karma Sett. The deck really didn't get touched. Okay, I say that. Cataclysm got touched and Karma got touched. I don't think those nerfs are enough to really stop what this deck does well. I'm disappointed that this deck didn't get nerfed more. I think I'm kind of tired of Karma Sett, and I'm sure a lot of you are as well. But since it didn't get touched, I think you all should continue playing it and trying to get some LP with this deck. The better you get a Paladin in this deck, the higher your win rate goes. It's one of those decks that really requires someone to really think about their plays to actually have a very successful win rate with it. So, yeah, pretty crazy deck. Not a lot that can be said about this. Maybe you don't have to run triple Caustic Rift if you don't think it's necessary anymore. If you get rid of Caustic Rift, maybe you add a formula here. As you can see, I only have place your bets and no formulas. Or you can add a second hand Splitterator if you feel like you need another way to deal with opponent stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Everything else is here is pretty standard. So enjoy your free LP with Karma Sett. The next 2 decks that I'm going to recommend are decks that I covered in the past 2 videos that we've done. Udyr Galio. Nothing got touched in this deck. I think this deck has a chance to actually be very good. You saw us in the video from yesterday. If you haven't seen that video, make sure that you watch it. I think this deck has the potential to be really good. I still like the Stunning Suppressor because it does mess up the Samira Barret decks or any other Samira decks, even if we're no longer running into Fist Samira as often. It also messes up the Karma Sett decks, slows them down just enough to give you time to stabilize and be able to win the game. So I think this deck has a good matchup into both Samira and Karma, which is why I expect it to actually be a pretty decent deck. Compared to the list that we showcased yesterday, I did add 2 Heartstrings here, and as a way to be able to actually deal with the Barret Samira decks if they get out of control. I also added a Selling as Suppress because I do expect to run into a lot more Barret than Samira. So being able to actually silence and destroy the equipment could actually have a lot of value to it as well. So those are the additions that I made compared to yesterday's list, but everything else is pretty much almost the same. We did get rid of Lord Eldred, which makes me sad because I do love Lord Eldred, but I wanted to make space for those harsh winds and that extra silence that suppress. So that's why we did it this way. So pretty great mid-range deck, and I think it's going to have a lot of success in the current meta. And lastly, of course, the last deck that I recommend if you want to get LP is Varus Samira. This is going to be the king of your patch 4.4 meta. This deck is amazing. You won a Runeterra Open recently. We showcased it 2 days ago. If you want to see how to play this deck, get ready because this deck is going to be all over the place. The couple changes that I made compared to the list that I showcased the other day, I did cut one Ambitious Cultist and instead went to Renegade Defectors. And the reason is obviously the nerf from the Cultist, but also the Renegade Defector works better with another card that we added, which is Transfusion. So we got rid of the All Out, and instead we go for Transfusion, which still gives me that +2/+2, which All Out used to give me before. And the Renegade Defector with the Tough is the best target to actually be able to give a Transfusion to. Everything else in the list is pretty much exactly the same. I definitely recommend 2 Unforgiving Cold because you're going to run into a lot of mirrors, and that's where the Unforgiving Cold can come into clutch. I wouldn't touch the Furious Wielders because again, a really good card into the mirror. Everything else is important. It's necessary for this deck to do what I want to do. If you want to learn how to play it, again, check out the video from 2 days ago because this deck is going to be all over the place, no matter which rank of the meta you're in. So, yeah. All right. I think that's going to be my last deck recommendation. That's 15. Again, we didn't get any new cards, so a lot of these are really meta decks that just got a slight adjustments. We got some spicy decks there with some of the new cards that got buffed, but for the most part, you know, a lot of them are just decks that you already all know and love. If you like today's video, as always, make sure to like the video below and subscribe to us. We post LOR videos every single day. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know thoughts about the patch. Are you disappointed? Are you happy? Are you excited about some of these decks, about some of these buffs? Let me know all of that below, and let me know what you think about our recommendations as well. Good luck to you all tomorrow. I don't think we have a new rank season tomorrow. I think the season resets on June, so it's not gonna be a new rank season, but it's still good luck if you're still trying to get to Diamond, Masters, etc. We are gonna be streaming on Twitch tonight. If you're watching this video on Tuesday night, we're going to be streaming tonight at around 9 p.m. Eastern time. So keep a lookout for that. And then we'll also stream again on Wednesday and Thursday when the patch comes out. So if you're not following us on Twitch at Sirturmund, make sure to follow us there. We're going to be a little bit more consistent on streams than we have been in the past. And you can also find us on Discord and Twitter. The links to those are both in the description below. So again, thank you all for watching. Super excited for this patch. And I'll see you all again tomorrow on the new patch.